I sold my family land in Jamaica to pay for my daughter's entire wedding. The same land where my grandmother grew sugarcane, where my mother raised chickens, where I taught my children to climb mango trees. I sold it all. For a daughter who seated me behind the kitchen trash cans at her own wedding. But what happened next, what I discovered that day, would change everything between us forever. If you're watching this story, please let me know in the comments below what country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this reaches across the world. My name is Sarah, I'm 75 years old. And this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most painful packages. It all started 3 months before the wedding. I was sitting on my veranda in Kingston, watching the sun paint the blue mountains gold, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Michelle, my only daughter, my baby girl who had moved to New York 15 years ago chasing what she called better opportunities. Mama, her voice crackled through the international connection. I have wonderful news. David proposed. David. I'd met him twice during my visits to New York. A successful lawyer, well-dressed, well-spoken, but something about his eyes. They were cold, like marbles. But Michelle was glowing every time she looked at him. So I kept my concerns to myself. That's wonderful, sweetheart, I said, settling deeper into my rocking chair. When's the wedding? June 15th, Mama. And I want you to know, David's family is very traditional, very proper. The wedding will be at the Waldorf Astoria in Manhattan. It's going to be expensive. I could hear the hesitation in her voice, the way she drew out that last word like it tasted bitter. How expensive, Michelle? Silence stretched between us, filled only by the sound of my neighbor's rooster crowing in the distance. $80,000, Mama. American. My rocking chair stopped moving. 80,000 American dollars. I did the math quickly in my head. That was more than 2 million Jamaican dollars. More money than I'd seen in my entire lifetime. Michelle, baby, that's a lot of money. Are you sure? Mama, please, she interrupted, and I heard tears in her voice. David's family. They're judging me already. They think I'm just some island girl who trapped their son. This wedding, it's my chance to prove I belong in their world. That I'm worthy of their son. My heart broke hearing my daughter talk about herself that way. Michelle was brilliant. She'd graduated summa cum laude from Columbia, worked her way up to senior marketing director at a major firm. But here she was, doubting her worth because some fancy New York family made her feel small. What about David's family? Can't they help with the costs? They're paying for the rehearsal dinner and the honeymoon. But the wedding itself? Mama, I've already put down 20,000 of my savings. I need 60,000 more, and I don't have it. The bank won't give me a loan that size. I looked out at my property. 5 acres of prime Kingston land that had been in our family for 4 generations. The same land where my grandmother had built her first house with her own hands after slavery ended. Where my mother had raised 6 children during the hardest times. Where I'd raised Michelle and her brother Marcus before he passed in that car accident 10 years ago. Mama, are you still there? I'm here, baby. I'm here. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked the property in the moonlight, touching the old breadfruit tree where Michelle used to swing, the spot where Marcus had built his first treehouse, the kitchen garden where my mother had taught me to grow callaloo and Scotch bonnet peppers. By morning I'd made my decision. I called the real estate agent that very day. Miss Thompson, I want to sell my property. Miss Sarah, are you sure? Land prices are rising. You could wait. I'm sure. I need the money quickly. Took 6 weeks to finalize everything. 6 weeks of paperwork, inspections, and watching strangers walk through my home pointing at things that needed updating. The final sale price was 68,000 American dollars. Enough to cover the rest of Michelle's wedding costs. When I called to tell her, she cried. Really cried. Mama, I can't let you do this. That land is your legacy, your security. My legacy is you, Michelle. My security is knowing my daughter is happy. This is what I want to do. But where will you live? I'll find a small apartment in town. Maybe closer to the market, closer to church. "It'll be fine, sweetheart." What I didn't tell her was that the small apartment I'd found was actually a single room above Miss Johnson's shop, with a shared bathroom down the hall and no kitchen. What I didn't tell her was that I'd have to walk 20 minutes to the nearest grocery store, or that the walls were so thin I could hear every conversation in the neighboring rooms. I sent the money the next day. 2 weeks later, Michelle called again. "Mama, I found your plane ticket online. You're flying economy with 2 layovers. That's 16 hours of travel time. Let me upgrade you to business class." "No, baby. You save that money for your new life. I'll be fine." But I wasn't fine. The flight was a nightmare. The first layover in Miami was delayed 4 hours. My arthritic knees were screaming by the time I reached New York, and I hadn't slept in 36 hours. But I was there for my daughter's wedding, and that's all that mattered. Michelle picked me up at JFK, and for a moment, seeing her bright smile, everything felt worth it. She looked beautiful. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo, her nails perfectly manicured. She was wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Mama, you look tired. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just excited for tomorrow." She drove me to a small hotel in Queens. Not Manhattan, where the wedding would be, but Queens, which she explained was more affordable but still close. The room was clean but tiny, with a view of a parking lot. I didn't complain. "The wedding starts at 4 p.m. tomorrow," she said. "I'll send a car for you at 2:30. The driver will have your dress." I picked it out myself. After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my reflection in the mirror. 75 years old, in a strange city, in a room that smelled like industrial cleaning supplies. But tomorrow, I'd watch my daughter marry the man she loved. Tomorrow would make it all worthwhile. The next morning, I woke up early and walked around the neighborhood, trying to stretch my legs and see a bit of New York. The streets were busy, people rushing everywhere, yellow taxis honking constantly. It was overwhelming but also exciting. This was Michelle's world now. The car arrived exactly at 2:30. A black sedan with tinted windows. The driver handed me a garment bag without a word. Inside was a dress. A navy blue dress that looked like something designed for a funeral director. It was the right size, but it was plain. Really plain. The kind of dress you'd wear to disappear into the background. But I put it on anyway. Michelle had chosen it, and I trusted her judgment. The Waldorf Astoria was everything I'd imagined and more. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, fresh flowers everywhere. As we pulled up to the entrance, I saw other guests arriving. Women in elegant gowns and men in expensive suits, all looking like they belonged in a magazine. The driver dropped me at the entrance and drove away without helping me with my small purse. I walked through the massive lobby, feeling very small and very out of place. A young woman in a black suit approached me. "Are you here for the Williams-Rodriguez wedding?" "Yes, I'm Sarah Thompson, Michelle's mother." She consulted her clipboard. "Oh yes, Mrs. Thompson. Right this way." She led me through a maze of corridors, past the main ballroom where I could see staff setting up elegant tables with white linens and gold accents. The flowers were stunning. White roses and peonies with touches of gold ribbon. It was like a fairy tale, but we walked past all of that beauty. We kept walking, through service corridors with fluorescent lighting and concrete floors. The sounds of the preparation grew more distant. Finally, we reached a small area near what was clearly the kitchen service entrance. "Here's your seat, Mrs. Thompson." I looked around, confused. There was a single folding chair. Not one of the elegant gold chairs I'd seen in the main ballroom, but a basic metal folding chair, positioned behind 2 large trash cans. Industrial trash cans with wheels, the kind used in commercial kitchens. "I'm sorry, I think there's been a mistake. I'm the mother of the bride." The young woman checked her clipboard again. "Sarah Thompson, seat K1. This is correct. But I'm behind the trash cans. I won't be able to see the ceremony." "I'm sorry, ma'am. This is where you've been assigned. The ceremony will begin in 30 minutes. She walked away, leaving me standing there in disbelief. I sat down in the metal chair and tried to process what was happening. From where I sat, I could see nothing but the backs of 2 garbage cans and a service door that kitchen staff kept opening and closing. The beautiful music I could hear was muffled, and the only view I had was of people in white uniforms rushing in and out with trays. Other guests were arriving now. Through the service door, I could catch glimpses of the main ballroom filling up. Everyone looked elegant, happy, excited. And here I was, hidden away like a shameful secret. A kitchen worker bumped into my chair while wheeling out another trash can. "Excuse me, ma'am, but you can't sit here. This is a service area. I'm supposed to be here. I'm the mother of the bride." He looked at me with pity and confusion, then shrugged and went back to his work. 30 minutes passed. I could hear the ceremony beginning. The music, the officiant's voice, the responses from the crowd. But I couldn't see anything. I was listening to my daughter's wedding like a radio show, hidden behind garbage cans while strangers threw away leftover food 2 feet from my face. When I heard the traditional, "You may kiss the bride," and the eruption of applause, I started to cry. Not happy tears, but tears of humiliation and heartbreak. I had sold my family's land, my home, my security, my legacy to pay for this wedding. And I was experiencing it from behind the trash cans. The reception began and things got worse. The kitchen staff were constantly moving around me, bumping into my chair, stepping over my feet. The smell of garbage mixed with the sounds of celebration I couldn't see. Occasionally, a server would emerge from the main ballroom and stare at me with confusion, clearly wondering why an elderly woman in a funeral dress was sitting in the service area. I could hear the speeches starting. David's father spoke about tradition and family values. His mother talked about gaining a wonderful new daughter. Michelle's maid of honor shared funny stories about their college days. But there was no speech from the mother of the bride. No acknowledgement of my presence. No introduction of the woman who had sacrificed everything to make this day possible. Around 8 o'clock, a server came over with a paper plate of food. "Someone said to bring this to you." It was clearly leftovers. Cold chicken, congealed vegetables, a dinner roll that had been sitting out too long. While just beyond those trash cans, I knew guests were enjoying a 4-course meal prepared by renowned chefs. Ate it anyway. I was hungry and I was tired, and I was more confused than I'd ever been in my life. As the evening wore on, I began to understand what had happened. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an oversight. I had been deliberately placed here, hidden from view, like an embarrassment to be tucked away. The daughter I had raised, the daughter I had sacrificed everything for, was ashamed of me. Ashamed of her Jamaican mother with her island accent and her simple ways. Ashamed of the woman who had sold her ancestral land to pay for this fairy tale wedding. Around 10 o'clock, as the reception was winding down, Michelle finally appeared. She looked radiant in her wedding dress, but when she saw me, her face fell. "Mama, I've been looking for you everywhere. Why are you back here? This is where they told me to sit." "Who told you to sit here?" "The coordinator. She said this was my assigned seat." Michelle's face went through a series of emotions. Confusion, realization, and then something that looked like guilt. "Mama, There must have been some confusion with the seating chart. Michelle, was I supposed to sit here?" She couldn't look me in the eye. "Mama, David's family. They have very specific ideas about how things should be done. They thought it might be better if you weren't too visible during the ceremony." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You were embarrassed by me." "No, Mama, it's not that simple. You took my money to pay for this wedding, and then you hid me because you were embarrassed by your own mother." "Mama, please let me explain." "Explain what?" "That you're ashamed of where you came from. That you're ashamed of the woman who raised you, who sacrificed everything for you." Tears were streaming down her face now, smearing her perfect makeup. "It's not like that, Mama. David's family, they're very traditional, very proper. They wouldn't understand." "Understand what?" That your mother is a proud Jamaican woman who worked her entire life to give you opportunities. That she sold her family's land to pay for your wedding because she loves you. Mama, I never asked you to sell the land. You didn't have to ask. That's what mothers do. We sacrifice for our children. But I never thought my own daughter would be ashamed of me. I stood up from that metal folding chair, my knees protesting after hours of sitting in the uncomfortable position. I'm going back to my hotel. Mama, please, let's talk about this tomorrow, when things are calmer. There's nothing to talk about, Michelle. You made your choice. You chose them over me. You chose their approval over your own mother's dignity. I walked away from her, through those service corridors, past the main ballroom where the last guests were finishing their dessert and coffee. Nobody noticed me leaving. Nobody had noticed me all evening. Back at the hotel, I sat on the edge of the bed and really cried for the first time all day. Not just tears of hurt, but tears of loss. I had lost my home, my security, my dignity, and most painfully, my daughter. The Michelle I had raised, the girl who used to hold my hand during thunderstorms and beg me to tell her stories about her grandmother, was gone. In her place was a woman who valued the opinions of strangers more than the love of her own mother. The next morning, I changed my flight to leave immediately. I couldn't bear to spend another day in New York, couldn't bear the thought of seeing Michelle again and having to pretend everything was fine. As I was packing my small suitcase, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Michelle standing there, still in her pajamas, her hair messy, her eyes red from crying. Mama, please don't leave like this. I'm going home, Michelle. Or what's left of it. We need to talk. Really talk. What's there to say? You made your position clear yesterday. She pushed past me into the room and sat on the bed. David's family. They're not good people, Mama. I know that now. You knew it yesterday too. I was so desperate to fit in, to be accepted. I've been living in New York for 15 years, and I've never felt like I belonged anywhere. David's family represented everything I thought I wanted. Status, acceptance, security. And what about your real family? What about me? I thought you would understand. I thought you would want me to have every advantage, even if it meant. She couldn't finish the sentence. Even if it meant erasing where you came from. Yes, she whispered. I sat down next to her on the bed. Michelle, let me tell you something. I'm proud of being Jamaican. I'm proud of our family, our history, our struggle. Your great-grandmother was born into slavery and died as a landowner. Your grandmother raised 6 children during the Depression and never let any of us go hungry. I worked 3 jobs to send you to university. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to be proud of. I know, Mama. I know that now. Do you? Or are you just saying that because you feel guilty? She was quiet for a long moment. Last night after you left, David's mother cornered me. She said she was glad my island mother hadn't been more visible during the ceremony. She said it might have been awkward for their friends to see. What was I really coming from? And what did you say? I didn't say anything. I just stood there and let her talk about my mother like you were something to be ashamed of. And in that moment I realized what I had become. I had become someone who would let strangers insult the woman who sacrificed everything for me. Michelle. No, Mama, let me finish. I realized that in trying so hard to fit into their world, I had lost myself completely. I had become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who would hide her own mother behind trash cans because she was worried about what other people might think. So what are you going to do about it? I don't know. David and we had a huge fight after the reception. He said I was being dramatic, that his family was just trying to help me fit in. He couldn't understand why I was so upset about the seating arrangement. And what did you tell him? I told him that my mother sold her family's land to pay for our wedding, and he had her sitting behind garbage cans. I told him that was unacceptable, that I was unacceptable if I allowed it to happen. Good. He said I was being oversensitive, that I should be grateful his family accepted me at all. He said if I couldn't adjust to their way of doing things, Maybe we had made a mistake. I reached over and took her hand. And what do you think? I think maybe we did make a mistake. I think I've been so focused on what I thought I wanted that I forgot what I actually needed. What do you need, Michelle? I need to be able to look at myself in the mirror and be proud of who I am. I need to be able to honor my mother without apology. I need to be with someone who loves all of me, including where I come from. That's a good start. Mama, I want to come home. Home to visit. Home to stay. At least for a while. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone else. What about your job? Your life here? I can work remotely for a few months. And honestly, I'm not sure this is the life I want anymore. I've been so busy trying to prove I belonged in New York that I never stopped to ask if New York was where I actually wanted to belong. You can't just run away from your problems, Michelle. I'm not running away. I'm running toward something. Toward home, toward family, toward remembering who I am. We sat in silence for a few minutes, holding hands like we used to when she was small. Mama, I can't undo what happened yesterday. I can't take back the fact that I let you be treated that way. But I can promise you that nothing like that will ever happen again. What about David? I don't know. He's my husband now, but I'm not sure he's the man I thought he was. Or maybe I'm not the woman he thought he was marrying. Either way, we have some serious talking to do. And if he can't accept who you really are, then I'll know I made the right choice in coming home. 3 months later, Michelle did come home. She left David. The marriage was annulled after she discovered he had been having an affair with a colleague for months, and moved back to Jamaica. She used her American work experience to start her own consulting business, helping Caribbean companies expand into international markets. She rented a small house just 10 minutes from my tiny apartment, and we began the slow process of rebuilding our relationship. It wasn't easy. There were months of difficult conversations, moments of anger and hurt, times when I wondered if we could ever truly trust each other again. But gradually, we found our way back to each other. Michelle started coming to church with me, something she hadn't done since she was a teenager. She learned to cook the traditional dishes our family had always made, recipes she had dismissed as too ethnic during her years in New York. She began to take pride in her heritage again, to see it as a source of strength rather than shame. 6 months after her return, she met someone new. Marcus was a history professor at the University of the West Indies, a man who spoke 3 languages and had traveled the world but chose to make his home in Jamaica. He was fascinated by Michelle's international experience, but what he loved most about her was her deep roots, her connection to family and tradition. When they decided to get married 2 years later, Michelle planned a very different kind of wedding. It was held at our old family church, the same church where I had been baptized, where my mother had been married, where we had held Marcus's funeral. The decorations were simple but beautiful. Local flowers, traditional colors, food prepared by the church ladies who had known Michelle since she was a baby. Michelle wore my mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her perfectly. I sat in the front row, wearing a dress Michelle had helped me choose. A beautiful blue outfit that made me feel elegant and proud. During the ceremony, Michelle looked directly at me and smiled, and I saw in her eyes the daughter I had raised, the girl who had come home to herself. In her speech at the reception, Michelle said, "I want to thank my mother, who taught me that love isn't about what you can get from someone, but what you're willing to give. Who showed me that family isn't about perfection, but about standing by each other through imperfection. Who sacrificed everything to give me opportunities, and who loved me enough to let me find my own way home." Today, Michelle and Marcus live in a house they built on a piece of land just outside Kingston. They have 2 children, a daughter they named after my mother, and a son they named after Michelle's brother. The children call me Grandma Sarah, and they love to hear stories about their great-great-grandmother who was born into slavery and died as a landowner. Michelle often tells them about the time she forgot who she was and had to find her way back home. She tells them about the importance of knowing where you come from, of honoring your family and your heritage, of never being ashamed of the people who love you. As for me, I live in a small house now. Not as grand as the family land, but comfortable and filled with the laughter of my grandchildren. Michelle insisted on buying it for me, saying it was the least she could do after what I had sacrificed for her. But I don't think of it as a sacrifice anymore. I think of it as an investment in love, in family, in the hope that sometimes people can find their way back to what matters most. The land is gone, but the legacy continues. My grandchildren will grow up knowing their history, knowing their worth, knowing that they come from a line of strong women who never forgot where they came from. And that, I think, is worth more than any piece of land could ever be. Sometimes the greatest gifts really do come wrapped in the most painful packages. My daughter had to lose herself completely before she could find her way back to who she was meant to be. I had to lose my home before I could understand that home isn't a place. It's the people who love you, who stand by you, who never give up on you even when you give up on yourself. The wedding behind the trash cans was the worst day of my life. But it was also the day that led to the best days of my life. The days when my daughter came home, when she remembered who she was, when she chose love over status and family over strangers' approval. That's a trade I would make again, every single time.